Okay, Andy, how do you want to do this? Do you want Bear to share his screen? Do you want to share yours? What do
Well,
you think?
yeah, Burge, would you mind sharing your screen and going through?
You're gonna put me on the spot now. So you want me to go into Storytell?
Yes, please.
Okay.
These are like the moments of truth for us because it doesn't matter what we think. This is like when you pull back the curtain and the show starts. We get to actually see what is real.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Burge, do you remember there was a toggle with public knowledge in the prompt bar on the top right of the prompt bar?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah. I am trying not to give you too much information
Yeah.
about what's going on right now because I don't want to lead you one way or another, but
Yeah. So if I click on it, tells me
yeah.
Smart Chat will use public knowledge for Yellow to none of your personal collection will. Okay. Yep, I like it. So then the point with this would be so I can upload a file and be able to not only talk to the file, but have Storytell look for public knowledge to add to it. Correct?
It's That's very interesting you're saying that because that means we're not very clear with our messaging because
Right.
this public knowledge you're on means that you're just chatting with public knowledge and nothing else, none of your files that you've uploaded.
Hmm. I
Hey,
thought that the
Um,
public knowledge was more of us being able to not only chat with our files, but to also chat with public knowledge and for Storytell to uh, not only provide like information that was I don't want to use the word logical, but let's use it for a lack of it logical, but also for it to come up with like crazy ideas that can help us with our business growth. That's what I thought. Maybe I misunderstood
Andy,
because
I'm gonna
remember
let you
when we were
answer that. I'm gonna let you answer that, Andy, and then I'm gonna propose something because Bears, you did not misunderstand.
no, you
because
did not misunderstand at all. It's we just modified
oh, okay,
how that works now.
okay,
But
because that's why I was thinking
yeah,
about the red. I mean the green, yellow, and red. Because if it's green, all good. If it's yellow, good, but just keep an eye on little things. If it's red, it's good, but there's stuff in there that you definitely want to read and make sure you're cool with before you're sending it to your boss.
So, Bears, let me ask you to do something, and then I'm gonna make a proposal. Can you
Sure.
just hover over? First of all, do you see that there's more than just the public knowledge button? Do you
Yeah.
see the buttons next to it?
Yeah. Dynamic
What
and personal. Yeah.
try reading those three, and then I want to make a proposal based on
Smart
that.
chat with person. Also regular. Yes. Okay. Right. So
So,
this is what I exactly thought, Cody. The first one is just chatting to my files, no public knowledge. The second one I thought was chatting to my files, but using public knowledge that we can source. Remember, I
yep,
thought that we
yep,
would
yep,
be
yep.
able to source.
yep.
The third one was the combination of the first two, but then for it to come up with like wacky ideas and suggestions.
So this is how we're building it, and I think there might be two things happening here. Tell me if this is true, Bears. The first is I don't know that it's clear that this is really a spectrum, and the spectrum is going from on the one end of the spectrum, just your data, on the other end of the spectrum, just public data, and in the
Yeah,
middle is a mix of both. I don't know that it's clear when we just have three buttons that it's really more of a slider. You're almost sliding
Yeah. I
What in
like the fact that it's buttons. I like the fact that you boxed it, Rodeo, because I'm a
yeah.
box type of guy. But what I would do is right now, if there's any way where like you can have personal collection in bright green, have dynamic in bright yellow, and public knowledge in like a pink.
Well, I hear you asking for that, Bears. I think we're a little bit worried that the colors are going to mean different things to different people.
Okay.
So I think we just need to figure out how to leverage colors in a way to you
Yeah.
without other people thinking it means something's broken.
Yeah,
I
that's
hear you
fair.
saying that like public knowledge is dangerous and to be validated effectively.
Not dangerous, like because I'm saying that it's reading off your files, it's reading off public knowledge, and it's giving you the sources, right? Because the way that you already have the sources, it's giving you that. But then there's a section to it that is not working off those sources, and it's just like brainstorming and the ability to brainstorm and be able to provide you with these um, ideas.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm putting in my decks and when I write, give me an executive summary, find the hidden insights, and then I would always ask, give me ideas on how to make improvements. So those ideas I have to really go through. And remember how we were talking like initially, what I was saying to you, well, the ideas that it's providing is very generic. Those are great, but once I start prompting it more, give me more, be more specific, then it gets, you know, then it gets somewhat creative. I know that it can't think, but it still can do that.
So I
That's
guess
but the color coding, I'm sorry that I'm cutting you off.
no. I'm here for you, so please.
I I definitely get what you're saying about the color coding.
I'm just wondering if let me share my screen for a second.
And
And
after doing that, hello, Stephen, welcome. And one thing, Jordy, I was thinking, I'd love to know from you, Barrage, when you speak to the color coding, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Like what would those colors accomplish for you?
It just makes it easier for me to understand what I want to what like where I want to go at that moment. It's just like when I'm driving a car, right? Green is safe, yellow is okay, I'm there, so I can either stop or move forward, and yet red is stop and really look things over.
okay, so first, just in terms of it looking like three separate buttons versus more of like a slider, let's talk about colors in a second. But would you prefer if it was almost like sliding between these so it's more clear that it's like a spectrum of options? Like would that help? Because what I noticed was you saw the button, but I don't know if you contextualize the button with the ones next to it.
No, I didn't like I looked at one and didn't really look at the
The other
others
two.
until you told me.
And so I'm just wondering, Andy, what you think about turning it into more of a slider to make it a little bit more clear that they're related to each other.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
And I'm just looking up, like it could just be something like, obviously visually, I'm not trying to say that it should look exactly like what I just had up here, but something that slides in between the three.
Yep.
In terms of color coding, hey Steve.
Yes. You always need a pirate around the holidays.
It's just like a Santa hat, right?
Stephen, I would love to know what would be clear for you. I don't want to break your flow, Jordio. And
No,
Oh, you guys feel free to keep going.
well, Stephen, have you seen this new functionality that has a spectrum of just the collection knowledge, kind of like a hybrid, which we're calling dynamic? Very open to feedback on that. word and then just public knowledge? That's what we're talking about.
I don't think I've seen that model yet.
Okay. Andy, do you want to just pop your screen up for a second to
Yep,
just bring Stephen into the fold on that? Stephen, I'm wondering why you're hiding your, okay, you're back.
Yeah. No, everyone wants to see the pirate hat. Barish, have you used filters on Zoom yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Maybe
Just make-
2025 we can do that.
Yeah,
Make sure you can turn them off so when you go into a call with Sky, you can not be
yeah, I'm
stuck.
sure he would appreciate that. You know.
Okay, Steven, so I'm here in my Batman collection, and what we did is we used to have a toggle just for turning public knowledge on and off. Now it's a three-way slider or radio buttons you can think of, even though they don't look like it. The first one is, and I'll let you read that for a second, but it's to scope your prompts just to the knowledge that you've uploaded in that collection.
Okay.
The second one is dynamic, name still in we're working on, but this interweaves both your knowledge and the prompts and the LLM's training knowledge into your response. And public knowledge is just
Not
public
chatting with my
knowledge.
collection at all, only chatting with the public.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So dynamic is what I thought the old public knowledge toggle used to do.
Correct.
Okay.
You thought
I
correctly.
understand.
And we're just trying to right now find the best way to make it clear to bits for bears that it's what's happening effectively without having to use a lot of words.
You know what I'd pitch? So like personally, I would find this unintuitive if it hadn't been explained to me. Like I found
Yep.
the old way much better. The challenge I have with this public knowledge option on the right, though, is that it's an option when I'm chatting with a collection at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels like an option that shouldn't exist in the context of Batman. It should exist as a peer to collections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We're going into Gen 1 all knowledge territory, right?
I mean, I don't think it's even all knowledge. It's like, hey, you've
sorry,
got
world
collections,
knowledge. I
and
think it was
directly
called.
above collections, you have, chat with LLM, chat without knowledge or something like that.
All right. That's how we
Yep.
do it in Gen 1.
Yeah.
Stephen, the reason, so we had discussed that we did it this way as a quick implementation based on some people wanting to just quickly cycle between the like including public knowledge at all or not including data at all based on the prompt in the thread and just being able to make it like specific to the next question that I'm asking, but not having
Yeah.
to leave the context of the thread. That was the reason for doing it this way, although I totally understand.
Yeah. So I think a lot of that I get from these two. Like really it is in the context of a thread, does it make sense for me to totally exclude the knowledge the context of that thread is based off? And this option is basically saying exclude everything else we've discussed, which is why I feel weird about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at it that way. I thought it was including the initial two, public knowledge in the sense of, so I thought that dynamic also included public knowledge, but sourceable public knowledge. The third one, where it's just public knowledge, it includes the first two, where it's reading off your files, it's giving you information that's sourceable, but it's also coming up with like dynamic learnings or recommendations that it's kind of making itself. It's the way I was explaining it to Drodio is when I'm doing these decks and I put it in there, Then I'm asking, give me recommendations to increase the ratings. Give me recommendations of what to do on this. So that it's there's nothing for it to source. It's just kind of coming up with, and I have to go through them to make sure that they don't sound crazy.
Got it. So you're after what you're after then, it sounds like, is almost two different levels of public knowledge, where you have like a citable public knowledge that works kind of like find.com does, where yes, it's leveraging information that isn't in your knowledge, but it's still able to supply footnotes. It's still giving you links back to websites where that knowledge comes from. And then you have like non-citable public knowledge, which like is all the random statements that the LLM can throw out there that have nothing to back them up whatsoever. Like, that Steven always wears a pizza hat.
Yeah, yeah, and for me for that is it's just to have creative thinking because I'm working in a business that's going down, it's shrinking. So like what creative thinking can this come up with that I'm not thinking of? And again, like 99 out of 100 could be nonsense, but if one makes kind of sense, I would take it that I didn't think of or my team didn't think of.
So Berge, what Andy's about to show you is a mock-up. We've got Ricardo on the call here, although he may also be wearing a pirate hat, and so he doesn't want to show us. Ricardo, do you have a pirate hat on too?
I don't, unfortunately. I'm looking for one.
Pirate hat again.
Yeah.
So maybe Andy, you or Ricardo, the two of you decide how you want to walk through a different approach, Berge. And I think for both Steve and you and Berge, would this approach better solve for what both of you are looking for? And Berge, as Andy's showing this, imagine that this has more than just three options. Imagine a world where it has more toggles than just these three. There could be a toggle for social listening, for example. But let's let Andy talk through this for a second.
Okay, Birch, so as you were talking about getting more creative answers as this third option, which is still public knowledge, it's still a combination of these two, but with extra creativity, let's call it. This is a mock-up that Ricardo did recently for us to try to explore a different way to expose these things to users. And it sounded to me a lot like you would like it more in a setup similar to this, where you can toggle where you want to get the information source from. And it sounds like user data would be, the files you're uploading. The creative answer would be the data that is not sourceable, that the LLM can just come up with randomly or creatively. And whereas knowledge, I would guess, would be public knowledge, but sourceable.
Yeah.
So coming from a website and these would be, and this is where you mentioned the green, yellow, and red. We don't have those colors, but based on each color coding, you'd be able to hover or interact in some way to find out where that part of a response is sourced from.
Yeah.
Did I do that correctly?
Yeah, that's
Ricardo?
perfect.
Yep.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's correct. So each one of these is suppose like a over state where you can just, let's say that you already have an answer for a prompt, and then you can actually navigate through that. Actually, after you can, select within the toggles to see which type of answers you're gonna have, and then you can just highlight that answer through them. Yeah, there's a lot of middle states that can happen here, but at least you have the control over what are you seeing in all of them, and maybe different sections are going to be composed by different source of data, but mostly that's the idea, that you got control over that, and then you can actually select if the next answer is going to have that or the other stuff that you need to interact with.
Steven,
So,
go ahead, Berge.
go ahead. No,
So I don't find it intuitive to let me, at least in the context of a collection, turn off user data. I do like the idea of having world's knowledge and creativity mode being two separate things. this feels, unless we have 5 other toggles that we know we need, this feels like overkill for me, and I'd almost just have them be 2 separate toggles where ones include world's knowledge, and it basically moves between what on the current UI is the collection or the dynamic option. Um, and then I could see a entirely separate toggle that is creativity mode. And literally, if you turn creativity mode on versus off, it's the difference between, is it feeling the need to cite its sources, or is it being encouraged to make things up based off what it knows about?
Stephen, from just a iterative process, to paraphrase, I'm hearing you say that it doesn't make sense to you to do this. I hear you. Do you have any objection to it? Because there's some users, I think much more like marketing users, that want to be able to just ignore all their data completely.
So it depends on the context. If this is in the context of a collection, I find it actively confusing. Having a ability to start a chat outside a collection that starts by chatting with nothing, I
Mhm,
think makes sense as a feature, but I would not do it this way.
mhm.
I
Kind
would
of
have that by, you know, having start chat with world's knowledge button above the collections.
Okay. A kind of related question. This might be more for Bears. Maybe it's for you, Stephen. Andy, can you zoom out just a little bit to show an answer, or maybe go to that other screen that you were just on? And Stephen, okay, cool. So yeah, perfect. How valuable would it be after the answer has been generated to still have the sources option? When you pull up the sources option, you get the toggles like you had. And if you turn a toggle off that was on, the existing answer changes to get rid of the stuff that you don't want. So you can kind of go back through the answers and reframe them.
I think it's interesting. And if I were making heavy use of more than one of these states, I would want to know which state a given answer is in.
Right.
Um, Creativity mode, I'm not convinced should be just a subset of that answer. Like, in a lot of ways, I think creativity mode should be an entirely different style of question. Like, either I want to do a question where I care about factual accuracy, or I want to do a question where it's trying to synthesize something for me. I
Mhm,
don't think that it's the same prompt and thus the same response for both of these.
mhm,
But I do think after the fact, being able to tell, is this a citable answer or a
mhm,
creative answer is very interesting.
mhm. Okay, Andy, Ricardo, what clarity would you like in Barrage on this?
Yeah, I think these are interesting thoughts. One thing that definitely to consider is maybe the wording and what specifically we can communicate in these toggles is one thing. So we can actually we definitely can try it out, to check how the creative mode could be just executed in a different way. So it doesn't get mixed with the other two concepts. I think is a valid thing to explore. But overall, I think there's something in these mockups that maybe is not pretty accurate, or at least is not still close or what exactly we want to say. Just to keep in mind that maybe the wording here could be changed. Um, but yeah, I think we can definitely can explore another execution for that creative mode. I guess the creative mode. I guess.
Yeah. And I could also imagine, like, if creativity mode is a separate kind of top level, it affects the entire way you're asking something. If someone's not in creativity mode and they ask a prompt like, write a haiku, hey, are you sure you don't want to ask that in creativity mode so that we can generate creative content for you? Like, I suspect there is a world of spotting and recognizing that the user might want something that they are not in for new users being useful too.
Okay, maybe last thing on this because we're technically over time. And can you go back to what's in production today? So in terms of just improving what we've got today, what are the quick things that we can do? I'm gonna propose that we turn this into a three-way slider so that it's a little bit more clear that at the very least you're sliding between related concepts versus looking like three separate buttons. Any objections to that or better ideas than that as a quick fix?
I
Thanks for-
don't think it would make me less confused by it. Honestly, like the dynamic concept is what I expected when on the old public knowledge
Mhm.
concept, and having a button in the context of a collection that excludes all content from that collection does not make sense to me. So I would
Yeah.
not find that intuitive.
Well, I hear you. And to improve what is live today, maybe another idea would be to have like X's and check marks or something. So at least we're making it clear that when you click on public knowledge, these two are being X'd out. Would that help make it clearer? Even if it's still,
So if I were going to take that approach, I would put a checkbox here. I would put a checkbox here. I would remove this option entirely. And the user checks the checkbox next to the collection to include its knowledge. They check the checkbox next to public knowledge to include public knowledge. What happens if they uncheck both? You're chatting with nothing. I'm not sure that's possible.
okay, responses.
I think, Stephen, to be honest with you, I think that confuses me more.
Okay.
The way that again, like the way I see it, so I think you're looking at it different from the way I'm looking at it. So when you're looking at public knowledge, you're just saying that it's not going to look into what was actually provided in the files. Where
Right.
I'm basically saying, I always wanted to reference the files, either in all three of them. So if I only want the files, I click Batman. If I only want if I want the files and I want it to be able to go through public knowledge that is sourceable, then I would click dynamic. Then if I want it to also give me a creative element, then I would click maybe the wording. I don't know. That's how I was, again, like,
Mm. Bears, I think you and Steven are
Yeah,
actually
so
very similar things.
Yeah,
doing
you're
something
agreeing
here
on
where
the
we mark it
facts.
as include
Sorry.
public knowledge, and then this is a separate toggle that is creative mode.
okay,
Like that would make a whole lot more sense.
okay.
Now, I don't think that creative mode you would want to have do what I heard Storytell say this button does, because I think even in creative mode, you would want it to be able to, if I'm in a collection, I would want it to be able to leverage the knowledge that is in that collection while it is being creative.
Well, this is what I want to propose. We obviously need to keep working on this, so thank you for that understanding. It's gold. We will look at other places where we can put being able to talk to just the large language models, whether it's a different section or whatever that ends up being. So understand that based on what we have shipped to production and the way it works today, which is not the way that you're both saying you would like it to work, but is how it does work. I would like to try to do something to at least make it clearer the way that it is working today. If we don't think there's any change that we can make that would make it clearer than it is right now about how it does work, we can just leave it alone and go focus on the bigger task. We could try changing some wording. We could try making it a slider. We could talk more about checkboxes.
I
Those are
think
all
calling dynamic include public knowledge is a big improvement. I think the current behavior of public knowledge doesn't make a whole lot of sense. to either Bears or me. The functionality he wants is different functionality. My inclination would be to remove this button until we can implement functionality more like what he wants and then put it in with terminology that aligns to what it is.
Okay, so let's work with that. So if this said just Batman, Andy, could you actually inspect on this and
Yep.
let's try updating it? So if that said just Batman, if dynamic instead said, something like Batman and public knowledge, or hold on, you're on mute. You're on mute, Steven.
Yeah, though honestly, I'd delete Batman. I would make it a button, and I'd literally just make the include public knowledge be a toggle, which I think it used to be.
It used to be, yep.
It did. Yep.
The reason we made it like this was to allow for use cases where people just want to talk to public knowledge, because now there's no way in our system to only talk with public knowledge right now with
Right.
this.
And for that, I wouldn't allow it in the context of a collection. I'd put a link to start a chat with just public knowledge up above the collections on the left-hand nav.
Right. Yeah.
But I
So
think
that's-
that collection, I think that concept trying to be added to the collection experience is causing confusion.
Okay, well, I just want to segment our work into like improving this in 5 minutes, even if it's still confusing. And then there's the bigger fix. And so it's like, what improvements can we make to this in 5 minutes of Andy, changing some words or changing it into a slider or whatever. I mean, I think I might be hearing you say there is no way to improve this.
I don't
Well, it
think you can
sounds-
get all three of those concepts in the collection concept as described without being confusing.
It sounds to
Now,
me
it's
like
possible the
reverting
people
to
are
the-
asking for that. And I wish we had that person on the call. We don't. Is actually asking for the same thing Burge is after with creativity mode. And if that's true, well, then it's enabling creativity mode. But I'm not sure how far we've gone down the thinking through what creativity mode looks like.
Erica, do you have any feedback from any other interactions that you want to bring to this?
I think honestly, there's not I can't point to a specific person and a specific comment. So I think just treating me as a customer LLM, essentially, to me the language, I think there's some language changes that we could make, like dynamic, as I think +1 to what Steven said about includes public knowledge, because just no one is going to know what dynamic means, or I'd be if they do it, I think it's by chance. Because it's like, okay, we're all learning what dynamic chat means. That's new language. Um, and I think what I've seen as well with our language to date and the tooltips is that they are a little bit more technical. And so that's where saying training data and then explaining what training data as opposed to public knowledge has made a lot of sense to me. But I totally hear what you're saying, Stephen, of just like, wait, what? How am I interacting with a collection but not interacting with a collection? So there's some like you broke your agreement with me.
Yeah.
How this works. I understand that. And I would add, I am hearing from folks like, whoa, you just took away the ability to, the beret. I think the beret is key. To interact with, like I would with ChatGPT. Like, give me a reason to not just go to ChatGPT.
Yeah, and like I feel like it's like the chat with nothing that people want to do.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a peer to chat with collections. And I feel as well like there is if I start a chat with nothing and I start uploading files to it, well, what am I doing? I'm taking that chat with nothing and I'm suddenly turning it into a chat with a collection. And there probably ultimately needs to be a flow for that.
All right. Andy's going to try something here based on what we're talking about. For now, this is the quick thing. So having 3 buttons, just Batman, button 1. Number 2, Batman plus public knowledge. Button 3, just public knowledge. Now, maybe that's going to be too long, because if the collection name is longer, so maybe it needs to be like a pick list, that pops up or something instead of like a slider. But if we had that for now, in the hopes of at least clarifying, is that better than what's in prod today, as we work on solving the larger issue that we're breaking our agreement with users?
That is definitely better than the current dynamic label.
Okay.
I still find it confusing, but it is definitely better than what is there right now.
Understood. So I'm going to propose that we make that change. And Andy, it might be too long to put next to each other. I don't know if it needs to be, something you click and it pops up 3 options in a list. It's up to you.
Yep.
But let's work on improving that. And then Stephen, we'll work on the larger issue. Thank you both for bringing that up.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
I have a question, though, Stephen. When it's just public knowledge, do you want it to include, like what we were saying, sourceable and non-sourceable public knowledge?
So I like your concept of sourceable versus non-sourceable public knowledge. What I don't know is that concept exists in Storytell at all today. If it does, having an ability to bring in the 2 different types gets interesting. But my suspicion as the non-LLM as one of the non-LLM experts in the room is that sourceable public knowledge is something we want that doesn't actually exist in Storytell today, and that when they're enabling public knowledge today, it's actually non-sourceable. Like they can't necessarily, for anything that comes back there, tell us like, go to this website to see it. Am I right about that?
Andy, let me share my screen for a second.
Yep.
So here's the way to think about how Storytell can work as compared to what's going on with like straight Chat GPT. Anything that shows up in Chat GPT becomes available in the API, typically within a month to 3 months later. And so now in Chat GPT, you can ask a question and it will give you a cited response. This functionality is coming to the API. When it's in the, we'll be able to use it as well. So Stephen, yes, you're absolutely right. Today, right now, we are just using the training data, which is up through October 2023. It is non-citable.
Yeah.
But that functionality that I just showed you will exist soon, and we want to build for that and be ready for it.
So when that comes in, my inclination would be that you can still show world's knowledge just as a toggle. When I hover over the toggle, it can expand and give me include citable knowledge only versus, all world's knowledge type of thing. So that, it takes up very little screen real estate, except for when you're interacting with it. But
Okay. So Andy, do you need anything else to ship the small improvement?
No, thank you for the feedback, guys.